Number 5. Anthony D. McClanahan. Anthony D. McClanahan spent 3 years at Washington State University, playing as a linebacker during the early 1990s, before being drafted by the Dallas Cowboys, an NFL team for which he never made an official appearance. McClanahan did go on to spend 4 years in the Canadian Football League as a starter for the Calgary Stampeders. In the early morning of November the 2nd of 2017, McClanahan was found by police officers in Park City, a small city in Utah known for its many ski resorts. On that morning, McClanahan was crawling outside on his stomach while covered in blood. He managed to flag down 2 police officers who initially believed he had been the victim of a violent crime. That's also the version of events that McClanahan went with, as he told the officers that he, along with his wife and baby, had been attacked. McClanahan's injuries turned out to be somewhat minor, and his problems started when police did not find any evidence to back up his story of having been attacked. What they did find was his wife's body in the condominium that McClanahan had been renting a month prior to the grisly discovery. McClanahan had been arrested on charges of kidnapping his 8-year-old son from a previous relationship, then traveling with him for 9 days before returning him and bonding himself out of jail a few days later. McClanahan's wife, Kerry McClanahan, had already been planning on leaving McClanahan on account of him physically abusing her, a decision that was reinforced by the man's antics in October. Despite that, she had decided to try and help him get back on his feet first. It was a course of action that ultimately cost the woman her life. A jealous and bitter McClanahan ended up stabbing her to death in his apartment, enraged by Kerry's plan of leaving him. His attempts to plead his innocence or reduce guilt by pointing to other attackers, faking a seizure, and faking memory loss from having played professional football all failed. In 2019, he finally admitted his guilt and was sentenced to life in prison. Number 4. Bruno Fernandes. In 2013, Bruno Fernandes was sentenced to 22 years in prison for the 2010 murder of his former mistress and the mother of his son, Elisa Samudio. The Brazilian goalkeeper, not to be confused with current Manchester United superstar midfielder Bruno Fernandes, had played for high-profile Brazilian club Flamengo between 2006 and 2010. During this time, he managed to win the National Club Championship in 2009. A year later, on June the 9th, during his last season with the club, his former mistress disappeared, shortly after having given birth to a son that she alleged was his, which Fernandes denied. Elisa Samudio went missing almost 8 months after she filed a police report against Fernandes and his longtime friend Luis Romao, nicknamed Spaghetti. In that report, she accused Fernandes, Spaghetti, and more of their friends of having kidnapped her and forced her to take medication to induce an abortion. They also allegedly beat her, and Fernandes was said to have pointed a gun at her head. When the forensic examination of the investigation was released in August of 2010, it was already too late. Samudio had disappeared at least 2 months prior. Investigations into that missing person case later found that Samudio had been lured into a trap. She and Fernandes had agreed to meet and discuss arrangements for child support, but instead she was picked up by Spaghetti and a cousin of Fernandes's who beat her up and kidnapped her. The cousin went on to confess that the victim was then handed off to Marcos Aparecido, a former policeman hired by Spaghetti to handle her killing. He did as instructed, and Samudio's body was never recovered. In 2013, Fernandes was found guilty of assassinating, kidnapping, and concealing the body of the 25-year-old woman, and was sentenced to 22 years in prison. Subsequent events would unfold with remarkable leeway in how the soccer player served his punishment. In 2019, after having served less than half his sentence, Fernandes was released from prison to serve the remainder of his sentence under house arrest. The term house arrest was loosely applied, as Fernandes has since appeared in 13 games for Rio Branco, a team that plays in a lower, semi-professional Brazilian league. Number 3. Hope Solo. Goalkeeper Hope Solo was one of America's most famous and high-profile soccer stars, frequently ranked among the best American athletes overall, when she got arrested in the early morning of June the 24th of 2014. It was a turbulent arrest because an allegedly drunk Solo resisted police officers who were trying to take her into custody, calling one of them a bitch. She was also reported to have said, "You're scared of me because you know that if the handcuffs were off, I'd kick your ass." Teresa Robert, Solo's half-sister, and Roberts' son were the alleged victims in the domestic violence case against Solo. Initially, it had been Roberts' plan to convince prosecutors not to pursue charges. However, when Solo came out of jail and in an interview accused Roberts' 17-year-old son of being the aggressor, she changed her mind and wanted justice. According to her version of events, a drunk Solo had showed up at their house and had gotten worse over the next few hours before physically attacking her son. The son managed to restrain Solo and Robert told him to let go, which he did. Afterwards, Solo resumed her attack on the teenager, jumped on top of him, and started bashing his head into the cement floor inside their garage. When Robert came from behind to help her son, she managed to get Solo off, but the athlete then turned on her and started punching her in the face repeatedly. Solo appeared in court several times until after several delays in 2018, both cases of domestic violence were eventually dismissed. It was because the half-sister and her son decided they didn't want to be witnesses in the case anymore due to the toll that the case had taken on them throughout the years. Today's topic was requested by Tuna Dream Productions, Cara Pasca, iGlow, and Momo 2 Times You Did. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Tonya Harding. On January the 6th of 1994, American figure skater Nancy Kerrigan had just completed a practice session at the Detroit Coba Arena. She was hanging out in the corridors of the arena when, out of nowhere, she was hit on her leg with a 21-inch collapsible baton, the other end of which was held by Shane Stant. 8 days after the attack, which had been meant to destroy Kerrigan's kneecaps, Stant turned himself in and confessed to his crime. The attack later turned out to have been orchestrated by the ex-husband of Kerrigan's longtime rival, Tonya Harding. Just before Christmas, a few weeks earlier, Stant had had a meeting with Jeff Gillooly, Harding's ex-husband, and Sean Eckhart, Harding's bodyguard. In that meeting, Gillooly and Eckhart offered Stant $6,500 to kneecap Kerrigan, to which he agreed. Even though the attack took place right before the American Figure Skating Championships, the end goal of it was to prevent Kerrigan from competing in the 1994 Winter Olympics. Kerrigan, who was hurt, bruised and battered, had to withdraw from the national championship, but recovered quickly enough to partake in the 1994 Olympics. She managed to secure second place, with Harding finishing in 8th place. Later on, Harding was directly linked to the attack and in the aftermath was stripped of her 1994 national championship title and banned for life. Stant was sentenced to 18 months in prison. His uncle, Derek Smith, who had connected him with Gillooly and Eckhart while also acting as the getaway driver, was, like his nephew, sentenced to 18 months. Jeff Gillooly was sentenced to 2 years after confessing, and Sean Eckhart was sentenced to 18 months in prison. Harding herself worked out a deal with prosecutors that allowed her to plead guilty to lesser charges than having co-orchestrated the attack, which she'd been suspected of doing. She got 3 years of probation, a $100,000 fine, and 500 hours of community service. Her legal troubles were not completely over just yet. In the years after her guilty plea, Harding was arrested twice more for driving under the influence. Number 1. Clayton Whitmore. In 2010, Clayton Whitmore helped his New Hartford High School Spartans capture a second straight Division II state championship. Shortly after clinching the division, Whitmore was even honored by the New York State High School Hockey Coaches Association as the state's Division II Player of the Year. He was considered a promising hockey star, and his future was looking bright. A mere 2 years later, Whitmore found himself in prison. He was accused of the murder of his 18-year-old girlfriend, Alexandra Kogut, who had been found dead in her dorm room at SUNY Brockport a few hours earlier, on September the 29th of 2012. Alexandra, like Whitmore, had been a promising young athlete, captaining her local swim team. When he was arrested at a thruway rest stop near Syracuse, Whitmore was 21 years old and playing hockey for Utica College. Kogut had been found with extensive trauma to the upper body. Whitmore initially denied the second-degree murder charge and having anything to do with her death at all. He was soon forced to change his story due to the overwhelming evidence against him. On the night that she was murdered, Kogut had tweeted about how excited she was to see Whitmore again. Her words started to have an ominous connotation, as in a subsequent tweet she wrote, "Should have known." an apparently ordinary argument about stupid stuff between the pair soon turned violent, and the two started shoving each other, according to Whitmore's version of events. In court, he declared that she kept pushing him, at which point he snapped and kept hitting her with his fists over and over again. He then testified that her breathing became irregular and she was starting to make gurgling sounds. Whitmore decided he did not want the girl he loved to suffer, and he grabbed a curling iron, which he used to end her life. In an attempt to get the murder charge downgraded to a manslaughter charge, Whitmore claimed that he had been physically and emotionally abused by his father growing up, something to which his sister testified. The jury would not be swayed, especially after it became clear that he'd been aggressive with some of his exes too. It took the jury under 2 hours to arrive at a guilty verdict, and Whitmore was sentenced to 25 to life. Thanks for watching. Would you rather become a professional MMA fighter and earn $100,000 per year, or a logger for half that salary? Let us know in the comments section below.